Time for some silver. I'm going to do a quick one today and do a spoon ring. This one's got some nice detail on it. And then I have this other little bit which might be not enough material, but we'll give it a shot. Let's get to annealing these. I'm going to cut this off and then anneal them, and then we'll get to bending and soldering. Nice and annealed. This one got a little copper plated because I used my stainless steel tongs instead of my copper tongs, which is okay because it'll rub right off. Let's get to bending it. I'll spare you that time. A little oblong in shape, but we can fix that once they're all soldered together. I still got to fix the little gap in between that before I solder it, but I think that's alright. This one's a little bit of an overhang. It's right about at a 6, size 6, which is my pinky, clearly. And this one is much smaller. What is this at? 4.5. Let's get to soldering them. Alright, we got them all nice and soldered, good and polished, cleaned up as best I can get. I've lost a little bit on a rebend for this one. It's a little bit of a size smaller as well as this one, but that's okay. I'm happy with how they turned out. The cool part about using flatware, specifically spoons, is you get to make this little ring. You have this little bit here, and then the leftover, which is this. What I like to do is I like to cut off this bit and add it to whatever melt pile, and then anneal the spoon itself, flatten it out, and I can use that as a backing plate for a cabochon style pendant. Here's a bit of an example here. This is from another older project. I messed it up quite a bit when I was putting in my piece of turquoise. The setting itself was too tight for the stone after I'd done all the work, and I went to go push it in instead of filing the stone so it would drop in, and I cracked it, which I'm kind of sad about. One of my friends made this, and I'm a little bummed to have him do all that work just to break it. Sorry, bud. But we can try again with this one. First, I gotta clean up all this nonsense, and then we can make a new pendant. What do you say? Much better. Nice and neat. More working space for a new project. This is a very nice piece of turquoise. This one is a little less porous than that pendant I showed you, so we wouldn't have too much issue having it crack. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use this old spoon. This will be my backing plate. And then I can take this, flatten it out just the same, and use this for my bezel and get a strip right down the middle. There's a lot you can do with this. This is just one idea of it. I have a little bit of detail wire here. I'm gonna cut the section that I'm gonna be using after the bezel's been made, and I wrap it around just a little. But before I wrap it, I do have to solder at least one end of this before I wrap it around, because this homemade stuff, if you stretch wire out and twist it to make this rope detail type, you have to solder one end so it doesn't separate when you go to wrap it. It makes it so much easier. This will be for the bail. Put that right in the top after my bezel and my detail wires put in. And then we can use this piece, which is much thicker gauge, for the bail itself. There's that spoon end. I've already annealed and hammered it flat. Flat as I could get. Now what I'm going to do is mark off best I can. I'm going to cut one side and then get myself a straight line right down the middle. And I'm going to make that strip for the bezel for whatever the height of my stone is. So I'm going to get my calipers out. I'm going to measure my height once I get to getting ready to cut it out. Alright, what I've done is cut the end off right at the top and flatten it out so I got one nice flush flat side. And take my little T-square here, or my speed square, whichever you have, and then I've drawn a line just about towards the longest point, gone down it. Now what I need to do is measure out my stone. Grab my calipers and I'm going to see what the tallest spot on this is and reduce it just a little bit. See, right about there is good. I'm going to check the other side. Cool. Now I'm going to mark it right about there. Match it up with the first line I did. Go back to my speed square and put it on that little mark and give it one more score down the edge where it connects. Now I can use the space between these two lines as my bezel, which should be just enough. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out. Cool. Now we have our tiny strip of bezel. I'm going to anneal it once and quench it, and then I'll wrap it around my stone here. The bezel's finished. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rest of this spoon, and instead of the other piece, this one's better suited for a bigger stone. So I'm going to take the bezel and I'm going to solder it on there after I clean it up, and then we're going to add the detail. Sweet. Nice and soldered on there. Now we can start in the detail. I'm going to solder up a little section of this, and then we can wrap it around, clean it up, and solder it onto our plate. I'm sure you can't see it on camera, but that whole section is now all soldered together between those two wires. Now that that's done, it's got a little bit more rigidity to it. Now I can wrap it around our setting here, our little cup, and solder it on. What I'm going to have to do is clean up the plate itself before it gets soldered on. That way it's nice and clean and I get a good bite. Then the last piece, which I'm going to do with the detail, is this little ring. It's going to sit right on the top there for the bail. I might add in a little bit of detail at the top with my shot plate. I still haven't dug these two out. They're such a pain. Let's get to the detail. Yeah, there's our little bit of detail. Fits nicely over everything. Very snug, which I like, at least for that outside part. I'm going to clean up this back plate right around the edges where this is going to get soldered in, and then I'm going to take this and put some sandpaper right here and then flatten out the bottom so there's a nice flush fit before I go to solder it on. And I'm going to solder on this little bit of detail with the ring at the top for the bail. Oh yeah, everything's all soldered up. I got my bail on there, nice and dangly. The stone's not completely put in there. I gotta pull it out and clean up the inside and a little bit of the stone so it drops right in there before I actually set it in place. I'm gonna polish it before I set it and then do a final cleanup. and then I can call it done. I'd say that's about it. One last cleanup to get all that buffing compound off of there, but I'm very happy with it. Not bad for something made out of spoons. Next.